All right, so I'm Leon Kochian. I'm the Associate Director of GIFTS, and I'm also a professor in the departments of plant sciences and also Department of Soil Science. And I'm going to kind of give most of my 10 minutes to a bit of an overview on what we can, just a flavor of what we can do in terms of improving crops for different traits related to this conference. And so I'll be more brief in my introduction about myself. I'm a plant molecular biologist, physiologist. In a nutshell, our research focuses on improving crop adaptation to suboptimal soils. So really, but this can apply to high input soils too, just as much. Developing crops that can do more with less. That would be improved yields using less water, so higher water use efficiency, and less NPK, so higher nutrient acquisition and use efficiency. And again, the whole area of fundamental research in crops has gotten much more sophisticated in terms of translating the kind of this genomics and genetics-based research into crop improvement via molecular breeding, marker-assisted breeding, and also through transgenics, particularly with now gene editing, kind of really providing a much better suite of tools. So as Andy mentioned, I came here 4 years ago to take this position as the Canada Excellence Research Chair in Food Security. This is an old picture of the team. You can see the faculty leader is here in front. You know these two gentlemen, that's Santa Claus and his main elf. And Dave spoke yesterday and Emil will speak today. And also more recently, we've been able to recruit Raju Datla, who's a world leader in crop genomics for improving crops for performance in the field, and he'll be speaking today too. Now, it's been clear from this workshop that agricultural research is now a big science. It's quite multidisciplinary, and that's the same with our team. We put together, researchers spanning from the different flavors of the biological sciences across the physical sciences, and our goal is to train the agricultural researchers of the 21st century that can either work at the interface of biology and physical sciences, or have the tools to work with these scientists from the other discipline, start speaking the same language. So I'm going to try to give a bit of an overview with the rest of the talk, and some of it will be our research on a snapshot of some of the tools, just some of the tools that are available could be used for the crop improvement side of research at the Food Water Nexus. And certainly, one of the really major advances has been based on technological and computational advances that allow us to do digital mining, digital breeding of digital crop genomes and phenomes. On the genomic side, with advances in next generation sequencing, it used to be a big deal to sequence a reference genome for a single crop, like Arabidopsis, which was the first plant, not a crop, but then rice was the first crop. But now we can sequence hundreds or thousands of varieties within a particular crop species, and that and have the tools to analyze it, called pangenome analysis. And this allows you, it's very powerful tools both for looking at your gene or genes of interest and looking at the variation, the very specific variation to look for variants, alleles that might perform better, or more broadly for breeding, is the computational analysis of these pangenomes enables you to identify millions of genetic markers, that is single nucleotide changes, single nucleotide polymorphism. So you can have a very densely genotyped mapping population. And then on the phenomic side, we've already seen a lot of this yesterday, advances in sensor and imaging technology and data acquisition, deep learning. We can now phenotype a very wide and deep range of different phenotypes, whether they're actually what a plant looks like, how it performs, even molecular and biochemical phenotypes. And we can do this on hundreds to thousands, again, of varieties within a mapping population, within varieties for a particular species. And then the advances in the genetics allowing us high resolution. We can, for example, we're interested in agronomic traits and the genes that underlie them. And we can use these mapping approaches to get at those genes, or at the very least, closely linked markers that can be used for breeding of traits. And then this can be fed into a molecular breeding pipeline to more rapidly improve crops. It allows you more targeted crop improvement and parent mimicking different traits. You know, and the kind of traits we're talking about here, as we have said before, would be, for example, improved performance under drought, improved performance under flooding, higher water use efficiency, higher nutrient use efficiency, things like that. And I think during the discussion today, you know, we have this large project across this campus in Bangladesh that's being led by GIFS. And during the discussion at the end of the day, I think Steve Ishel a few minutes there, but there's an area where, you know, we found in our meeting in Bangladesh, and we, Jay and I and others had lots of discussions, potential for working at the interface of what the Global Institute for Water Security does, what GIFS and other researchers on campus on the plant side do. So a couple of examples. Root system architecture turns out to be a very important agronomic trait under genetic control. And what is an ideal root system architecture under nutrient limitation? Well, it really depends on the nutrient and lots of other factors, but I'm going to just generalize here. You know, a shallow root architecture, as Javier showed yesterday, this would be best for a nutrient that tends to move slowly, like phosphate gets hung up on the surface of the clay minerals, and more of it is in the topsoil. You want to put the roots where the phosphorus, the phosphate is. For a fast moving nutrient like water, under, you know, drought conditions, you want deeper rooting in general to acquire that water. So here's an example. You don't have to be high tech. A friend of mine in Japan, Yusaku Uga, he used spaghetti colanders to map root angle, to phenotype a mapping population of rice between a paddy rice IR64, which is very shallow roots. You can see they're coming out on the sides of the spaghetti colander, and a upland rice that, you know, grows under kind of traditional agricultural approaches, and these have deeper roots. And so he made a mapping population, phenotyped it, and he identified on chromosome 9 this region where a lot of the variation in root angle existed. He called this a DRO1 for deep rooting. And then he subsequently cloned this gene. And I want to show you that it does confer deeper rooting and ultimately better performance under drought. So here we have IR64, the shallow rooting system, and this is its genome, the 12 chromosomes all in white. And then they use markers just to integress this little region on chromosome 9 from Kaneneng Patang that contains DRO1. So this is all IR64 except for this region. You can see the big change in root architecture, not just deeper roots, but bigger roots. And you can get the same response if you use transgenic approaches. And here's IR64 expressing DRO1. The important thing over here is in the field using rainout shelters. Under a moderate drought, when you express DRO1 in IR64, you get about a twofold increase in grain yield back to what you see under well-watered conditions. So it does work. It has a significant impact on improved performance under drought. I'll talk a little bit about our work, somewhat more sophisticated approaches to image roots in a mapping population for both 2 and 3 dimensions. This is work by Randy Clark, who was a very talented biological engineering PhD student in my lab at Cornell. And so here we grow, in this case, rice roots in a system where we can hold them so the architecture doesn't move. In this case, it's gel. And this is a computer-controlled system that controls the turntable and the camera. So the Root Reader 3D program starts. Take 100 2D images as the root system is rotated through 360 degrees. And then the software reconstructs those 100 2D images into a 3D model. You can see one for an upland rice, which has a deeper root system, particularly these crown roots, which dominate later in the plant's life, versus IR64, where they're shallower. We quantify a number of traits. One of them is centroid, which is shown here, the center of mass, vertical position of the center of mass of the whole root system, the distance of that from the seed. And it's a good predictor of deep versus shallow rooting. Need to ground truth this in soils. So my lab manager at Cornell Job Chaff went to Malcolm Bennett's lab in the UK, and image the roots of these two in soil using X-ray CT scan. And indeed, the Azucena has a much deeper root system than the IR64 in soil.
Hey, Liam, we're at 10 minutes now.
Okay, I just have two more slides.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
yeah, I see that on my timer. So, an example from our lab, and this is on phosphorus efficiency, the ability to maintain high yields on low P soil. Long-term 20-year collaboration with Zsernja Magoyais of Embrapa. We had a 300-line sorghum association panel, was phenotyped for grain yield. So the actual trait, grain yield on low P soils, and then for those root traits. And we ended up phenotyping 1,200 plants with replicates from these 300 lines. And we were able to identify a gene from this through a type of genetic mapping that we call phosphorus starvation tolerance gene, Pistol-1, and it is associated with increased grain yield on low P soils by increasing lateral root growth. We've shown that yield generates an increased yield when the superior alleles are introgressed into P inefficient lines. And my last slide just shows you a P efficient and a P inefficient line, root systems at 7, 10, and 14 days. Under sufficient P, the P efficient line has a lot more lateral roots. So this is a partly constitutive trait. And then under low P, the lateral roots are induced to be even larger and be able to reach out into that topsoil. Okay, so I'm going to finish there. I think the question is for me, how do we fit all these parts together in a coherent, program so we can collaborate as crop scientists with a hydrologist, agronomist, computer scientist, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Liam.
Yep.
That's a great overview of your work. Yeah, I guess we're holding questions until the end, and so we'll just move straight on to the next presenter, who I think is Elaine Wheaton. Elaine, if you're on the Zoom call, hopefully you can share your screen.
Yeah, I've unshared.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hello.
I was hoping that Palash would share the screen.
Okay, that's fine as well.
Possible. And while he's doing that, I'll just start.
Yeah, that'll be good. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm a climate scientist, adjunct with geography and planning and SINS. I'm also an emeritus researcher, thanks Palash, with the Saskatchewan Research Council. So doing very applied work with large teams. And I have more information at the back there. So the tools I use, I finished with that one, thank you. The tools I use, and in fact, I'm working with very large teams. So we use climate change scenarios. With those scenarios, we look at the impacts of climate change, the risks of various aspects of climate change, such as extremes. Then we target this work towards adaptation and vulnerability assessments, asking how vulnerable are certain areas, certain groups, and what can we do about it? So the methods emphasize drought, heat, and excessive moisture. And I have a list of specific tools here. I'll just draw your attention to the agri-environmental indices that are used by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and also OECD. And we examine the relationship between the water balance indices and yield models and continue to do these assessments. I have a note to myself here that the team that we work with includes many social scientists that look at examine things like the values of the group that we're working with to determine their needs assessment. Next, please. So it's not what I've done, but what of these huge teams with social sciences and economists have done. First of all, with the climate scientists, I've looked at the changing life stages and characteristics of drought. When you're looking at plant science and soil science, you may consider drought as to be one sort of characteristic, but it has numerous characteristics. It's actually got a life stage of growth, persistence, retreat, and these could be different in space and time, very different, both in the past and in the future. So as I mentioned, I use these environmental indices, and then we take all this literature and do assessments of climate impacts and adaptations. And I encourage you to look at the wide range of climate impacts in the past and future. And the most recent Prairie chapter of the Canadian National Assessment of Climate Change will help you, because it will be coming out the first part of December. And another one is, of course, impact assessments of drought and excessive moisture on crop yields. Oh, I should mention that I'm a farmer as well. Mostly crops, but certainly livestock. Next, please. So what would I like to do? What would we all like to do and see in food, water? So vastly improve the knowledge of these impacts of climate change. We know several of these impacts, but I'm sure there are more, especially with a continually destabilized climate, especially in the prairies and interior continental regions such as these. So not only for agricultural production, crops, livestock, and sustainability, but many other aspects, the communities that reside in these areas. So I see that there are many gaps in the awareness of and use of climate information for adaptation that is solving these massive problems of drought of many different times and excessive moisture and heat. That'll make a big change in agriculture worldwide and the economics of agriculture. And the aim is to reduce the vulnerability and these huge costs of changing climate. So I encourage all of you to look at these possible impacts and the current impacts. And of course, we always are working on enhancing the knowledge of these tools. And of course, this is just an example of some work to be done. Next, please. So I'm on to the next big question. So I challenge all of you to look at what impacts of climate variability, change, and extremes are for your area of interest. If you have any questions, let us know. There's lots of maybe too much information about climate change science. And most importantly, what are the problems? Drought effects on soils, on water, excessive moisture, and more of those two extremes, and heat. And how do we improve adaptation to these effects? Don't forget the problems that we're gearing these aspects to. And that's my last slide. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Elaine, for that. We'll move right along, just for the sake of time, to Sabine. I think Sabine Liebenehm. Yes, you're on. Can you share your screen, or someone's going to be doing it for you?
I think I should be good.
Okay, well, go ahead. Thanks.
Let me see. So good morning, everyone. I hope you can see my screen.
Maybe,
so,
yeah, your presentation. Go for it.
All right. So my name is Sabine Liebenehm. I am an assistant professor and joined UFS in September 2019. I'm basically working in agriculture and development economics, mostly with small-scale farmers in developing countries. But very recently, since I came to UFS, I'm also engaged with indigenous communities in the north. I did my PhD in economics from Hannover University in Germany back in 2015, and before coming to UFS, I had a small research grant that funded myself and a small research project in Thailand and Vietnam. Okay, what tools, methods I'm using? Usually I go to the field and do household interviews, and I also conduct so-called economic lab in the field experiments to understand the economic decision-making of these small-scale rural households. And once I have these data sets, I do regression analysis, combine the household survey data recently with georeference data sets, so with precipitation, temperature data, calculating, for example, the SPEI as Elaine has just shown, and try to conclude on interrelations between behaviors of these farm households, their exposure to risk, and adaptation strategies. I also do social network analysis, and I have been involved in bioeconomic modeling. What I have done, so if we assume small scale agriculture household in a developing country context, these households are basically exposed to a risky environment. So they are not only exposed to a myriad of adverse risks, not only climate change, also idiosyncratic risk. And at the same time, they are exposed to poor institutions. So that means there are no functional credit or insurance markets. Governmental institutions are not working. So when these households are exposed to this risky environment, I'm basically looking on the interlinkages between behavioral attitudes. So that may sound a little bit theoretic, but from an economics point of view, it's pretty important. What are our intrinsic behavioral attitudes, for example, towards risk, towards time? How patient are we? How risk averse are we? Then I'm looking at certain risk management strategies, such as the adoption of agriculture technologies, changing agriculture practices on the field, or adopting new technologies. Risk management can also involve agriculture diversification, so adding a new crop to the plot, or diversifying into livestock keeping, for example. Then there's something like income diversification households could do, so not only working on their own farm, but maybe at a small shop if the financial constraints may allow it. Another risk management strategy that has been often observed is migration. So agriculture households, for example, in an extending dry season, may send an household member to an urban area to search for work. And another important risk management strategy is also social networks. So how do different households, friends, kin, support each other in communities? And of course, all these risk management strategies may then have certain important socioeconomic outcomes. As economists, of course, coming from development economics, we first look at poverty outcomes, but of course we also know that non-monetary outcomes are also very important, such as food security, education, and health. And we also know that each of these outcomes are also interlinked. So the better the food security, the better the education, the healthier children and household members are, the less or the more likely it is to exit the poverty trap, basically. And then, of course, all these three components are again interlinked with each other. I'm not sure if this small Padlet works. It's going on a different website. Maybe I can. Okay, it's of course not working. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to show where I was working. So that was mostly in West Africa, in Mali and Burkina Faso, where I had a project with small-scale cattle farmers working on the adoption of improved disease technologies in cattle, for example. Another project was in Thailand and Vietnam, where I had a look on the impacts of droughts on migration, for example, or how rural households in northern Thailand share risk with each other in their social networks. What I'm doing is, well, I was, I guess, hired to come to Canada to do development economics also here in the north. So I have a current project with Dave Netcher working on perceived risk and opportunities towards road development. From an economic perspective, we would basically think road development infrastructure projects are positive. They have a lot of economic benefits, but that might not be always the case. And particularly in this region in northern Alberta, we want to identify what are actually the anticipated risk and opportunities of connecting a more or less isolated community with the rest of the province, basically. Then I'm working
Sabine, 1 minute.
Okay, I'm almost done. Then I'm working with Carol Henry and others on agri-food systems research and innovation in Canada's north. And because I also still like to engage in warmer countries, I wrote a proposal together with Andrew Ireson and Corinne Schuster-Wallace on water security to promote gender equity and climate change resilience in Ghana and Senegal. What I would like to see in food water, well, from my economic perspective and coming from development economics, you know, when I deal with those georeference data set, I wish I would have more interdisciplinary research with experts in those fields and a big focus on sustainability. And due to my involvement with Corinne, I haven't been working on gender equality before, but due to the engagement in the recent proposal, I think it is very important that we develop culturally accepted solutions that help us to obtain sustainability and climate resilient development pathways with equal opportunities, not only between men and women, but also between all indigenous communities and all other equity groups. And I guess that is also my biggest question for the group, and that's why I made the question mark over here. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Sabine. Moving right along, Maryse Bourgault, I think is on next. Are you online?
I am here.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Hopefully everyone else can. So you share your screen.
Do I need to have permission to share the screen?
Someone.
Oh, share screen. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
Do this.
You have to full screen.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So my name is Maryse Bourgault. I'm an assistant professor in the departments of plant and soil sciences. So I have a joint appointment between the two. I was hired as the Western Grain Research Foundation chair in integrated agronomy, and I'll talk to you about that just in a minute. But I'm a crop physiologist by training, so I have a background similar to our first speakers, Dr. Kochian. I spent most of my career, I guess, or my scientific career, trying to understand traits for adaptation to rain-fed agriculture. So I don't really like to talk about drought tolerance because you know, people tend to think about you know, resurrection plants and that kind of stuff. It was really interesting to hear all of the work that's being done with irrigation, because my very first experience in research as a master was to look at deficit irrigation and alternate furrow irrigation in the RLC basin. And for some of you that might be familiar with that area, the RLC is one of the largest ecological disaster, basically, based on irrigation. So that's also kind of shaped my career in a sense that I've basically decided to work on trying to understand rain-fed agriculture and how we can do the most with the rain-fed that the rainfall that we get, rather than use irrigation. I did my PhD at McGill in Montreal. I've done 2 postdocs in Australia, mostly working with traits in climate change perspective. I had a state extension job in between those two postdocs. So I was 9 years in total in Australia, you know, as you might imagine, like very semi-arid kind of environment. I was an assistant professor at Montana State for 3 years before I got here. And then I started in March, so official date March 1st. And so it was lucky that we had the Soils and Crops workshop, you know, for me to meet some people because, you know, 2 weeks later I was sent home and basically I haven't been able to come back. So so if you don't know me, that's perfectly normal because yeah, I've been in my house thinking. So, so that's kind of it. So my framework, the way I think about things is really focused on traits and focus on that genetics by environment, by management interaction, and trying basically to see, you know, what kind of package do we provide to farmers to have plants or crops, cultivars that are well adapted to the environment, that are resilient to that. What kind of genetics do we need to do that, and what kind of management do we do to support all of this and make that optimal package, basically. So that's been, you know, I'd say, you know, my first postdoc was more about traits. When I moved to Montana, we, you know, spread a little bit more to get the agronomy and focus more on that side. And before I moved to, you know, the chair, now we're trying to encompass a little bit more. But some of the things I've done that might be of interest to other speakers on this call is we've looked at root systems and populations of pea and lentils, and you know, working with breeders basically to try and characterize what they had in their populations. This is it's fairly intensive because we're looking at the plant system throughout the season up to maturity. So as you might imagine, you know, there's a fair bit of range there, and it's fairly intensive work to tracing all this. But we found that with some of the crops, the early root system doesn't really correlate well with what we see later on in the season. And I can talk more about that if, you know, I'll be there at 3 o'clock as well. So, or we can take that offline. But so the idea there was basically as support to breeders to tell them or to give them information about what they have, what they can possibly do with what they have. And as a physiologist, I like to see whether or not that's, you know, what is deep rooting actually a good adaptation for our environments or not. All right, so what I'm doing now with the chair, and I should have renamed this a little bit, but with the chair, we're trying to expand this and not just looking at the trait and the package of irrigation, because they've titled my chair Integrated Agronomy. And then when I said, well, what do you mean by integrated agronomy? They kind of came back to me and basically said, well, what do you think it is? What we're trying to see is not just, you know, at the field level. So as I'm going through my career, I'm kind of increasing the scale of the system I'm looking at. So going from the field, that we're going from the farm and including, you know, the province, the country, and the system in which farm actually operates. So what we're trying to do really, and the way I think about this is, you know, you have a number of different things that you want in terms of your objectives for farms, and profitability is one of them, but, you know, quality of, I've put quality of life there as well. You know, environmental impact is obviously an important one as well. So all of this, at some point, you know, if we focus on one practice, and I think what might happen is that, you know, you basically pull the system in one direction to the extent of other things in life. So with the chair, what we're trying to do is find a way that we can expand all of that and expand that area on that spider graph and just improve everything together. So I don't really have a big question or yeah, to propose to the group, but I mean, our conversation yesterday at 3 o'clock, I felt a bit shy about speaking up about this, but what I'd like to do is invite you guys. I mean, I've started in March, I haven't done anything yet, but the plan is to, like, my first thing I want to do is to start a cropping systems comparison experiment where we look at crop rotations, look at winter crops, cover crops, perennial phases, including livestock grazing, if I can get the cows in, intercropping as well. And the main objective there would be to see whether or not we can increase organic matter while still working the land and still getting some kind of profit from it. And my interest in it is because if you improve the soil organic matter, you're improving the soil water capacity of your soil. And that, kind of includes resiliency, and it's good for the health of it's good for soil health, etc. as well. So what I had envisioned was large plots. If I can get them here at, or, Kernan Farm or something, so close by. We also want to establish on-farm sites. Realistically, that's not going to happen for next season, but hopefully for 2020, 2023, we can have representative farms, and I mean representative based on soils. And so I'm not completely sure how much, how many farms we'll have will sort of depend a little bit on the funding that we can get on top of the funding I have for the chair. But my invitation is there. Obviously, as you can imagine, looking at the whole system means that, we're requiring an interdisciplinary perspective. I've dabbled in a number of things, but I'm not an expert in social sciences or economics and lots of other. So if there's, if this is interesting to you guys, just please let me know. I realize that, we might not have time to talk about this too much, but, please email me. That's, I'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maryse, for that overview of your research. Moving on, I think Venkatesh in engineering is next to speak. Hello, Venkatesh, you online?
I'm trying to share my screen. Give me a second.
Oh, hi. Good morning.
Hi. Is that visible?
Yep, seems to be.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, acknowledging the invitation from GIFS and also Global Water Futures organizing team, and also the management of the committee that who organized, particularly Hassan and Dr. Palash. Thanks, Andy. Good to see you. Welcome all for this session. As you have seen on the screen, my name is Venkatesh. I wear a different hats, but within the time allocated, I'll try to limit myself with specific points related to food water nexus. I do research at the College of Engineering's Chemical and Biological Engineering department, but a little bit of background of what my journey has been so far. In terms of first training in mechanical engineering, shift in gear for some of you on the board, did a brief experience at State Ag University in Southern State in India. Then moved to Montreal. Maryse is an alma mater at McGill, I just came to know. So I did my 8 years at good work and training experience at McGill's McDonald campus, the Bioresource Engineering department, and also worked at the Office of the Vice President Research briefly in the international project development scope before moving to Saskatchewan in 2002, the then Ag and Bio Resource Engineering department. So the meaning of these words speaks to its interdisciplinarity in the way I have acquired over the years. That's what I want to bring, and that's one of the strongest points I would like to advocate, and also welcome collaborations going forward. So a brief information on some of the highlights of my professional society involvement, which is Canadian Society of Bioengineering, and of course American counterpart as well. I was supposed to be in Australia this particular semester on sabbatical, but no travel, no leave. So I deferred my leave to the later part. That's in Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane campus, called Institute of Future Environments. I'm mentoring some of the scholars there since last year. Of course, in India, where I originally came from, have invited me to work on different projects, training, scholarly exchanges in the field of agricultural, post-harvest and food process engineering aspects, and also some of the process water treatment as well. So last but not the least on this slide, I would like to invite you to at least be aware of there is a network called Sustainable Water Action Network. We will provide details later on for those who want to be members. It's fun to be involved in that as well. So what tools and methods? This is a snapshot of some of the routine applications I use in terms of R&D methodology and experimental work. Use of electromagnetic energy spectrum in terms of tapping for sensing, diagnostics and processing, particularly using the spectrum within the infrared, ultraviolet energy and microwaves, and so on on the spectrum for different applications such as crop drying, thermal processing, sensing of moisture content in a grain bins, or even looking at compositional analysis of protein starch mixture in a matrix. Also on the process water treatment side, having some technology interfaced with applications for decontamination as well as intensification of a process with minimal energy is what I do for removing bad stuff or contamination. So at community level, I'm quite involved with First Nations communities as well, with some small fundings here and there. But I'd like to draw attention to the collaborators here to look at scale up and appropriateness of wastewater. It's not the field water treatment, it's the process water or the leftover mixture of moisture and compositional and nutrients that can be recovered. I also have established drying technologies and dewatering methods using the methods of clean energy. It's called green scope. In terms of electromagnetic wave energy, it could be electric field, it could be magnetic field, without much of damage to the molecules or ions of interest. We can do an instantaneous effect, volumetric effect, as well as selective effect. This is the fun of these modern day communications that use the same electromagnetic waves, but at different frequencies and bandwidth, if you want to name it. So I'm quite familiar with this over the years and biophysics and quite of mathematical approaches. So we are ready for collaborative projects. One of my first PhD students tried to couple the ultraviolet 254 energy inside a microwave chamber in a domestic oven. We were able to synthesize or generate a UV254B to degrade an aphthenic acids in water contaminant mixture, where simply the molecular weights degraded within a matter of seconds at the end of the process. So it was quite an instantaneous. I'd like to discuss more for a scale up or a facility in a feedlot, for example, or in a agro processing nutrient recovery strategy scheme. We can put this technology in there. And of course, material processing, bioprocessing, and biological materials handling. These things attracted me to be collaboratively working with different countries, particularly India, Brazil, China, and Turkey in an interdisciplinary fashion. So I love these integration tools. So I continue to do what I just showed on the slide. The idea is go for 3 E's: energy, environment, and economy. We shouldn't leave the hat of economics. That's why I put minimal processing of bio and agri-food products. We are also looking at protein starch separation by electro-tribocharging, meaning less water, which is also a big ticket item in a processing industry. So one way of looking at water treatment, the other way is looking at water removal or water management in a process driven for value added industries or sectors. So with that, waste reduction becomes even more important, and handling strategies is what I would like to see, to build a strategic partnership and relations building internationally. But this nexus is for intra, meaning UFS. So it's lovely to have this forum of experts. Particularly academic programming could be thought of across departments and disciplines, perhaps professional certificates for international scholars in the field that we can collaborate internally, cross appointments and joint grant applications, include water treatment and or processing technology as a research theme between the 2 centers of global excellence. I'd like to see that moving forward, and constitute a working group on specific themes and identify a leader or a champion to steer the wheels. One particular attention for the group, is there a envelope for a strategic allocation for funding in this area, particularly for treatment of processed water, which we can, I'll be happy to share a little more, but I have other things listed. I was asked to share one big question, so the rest all fall into place. With this opportunity, thank you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the audience for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Hey, Andy, do you mind if I just interject for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So Venkatesh, this is the second time I've heard somebody refer to GWF as an institution. It's not, it's a program that the Global Institute for Water Security runs.
Oh,
okay. So this meeting is organized by GIWS and GIFS, and both have CFREFs. Andy's the director of the PERC 2, and John Pomeroy is the director of GWF. It's a program that will disappear, but we're talking about long-term, building long-term programs and collaborations that extend beyond these CFREFs. And then we're thinking about, okay, maybe we can do a joint CFREF in the future.
Thank you.
Sure.
I would correct to GIWS. Thank you, Jay.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Jay, for that clarification. I think I'm up next in terms of presentations. So if someone could share on my behalf, because I can't actually share myself.
Oh, yeah, Palash is doing it. Great. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Palash. So Jay, that was actually a nice segue into my presentation. I'm going to give a sort of brief overview of the Plant Phenotyping Imaging Research Center. So this is one of the CFREF projects. We have two on campus, the other one being at the Global Water Futures program. So as Jay said, these are programs funded through the Canada First Research Excellence Fund. And I'm just going to give an overview, and quite a few of the PIs and leads in the project at this meeting are giving talks, but hopefully just give an idea about the scope of the work. Next slide. So yeah, just in terms of highlights, it's been going since 2015. And we actually had a first phase, phase one, where essentially established platforms for the whole program. Very interdisciplinary program. We have a range of PIs from all over the campus in different departments and institutes. We've got a lot of leveraged funds, a lot of people involved, and significant amounts of publications over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. As I said, we've moved into phase 2, which is flagships, so research-related flagships. Next slide. We had a midterm review last year, which went pretty well. I think we represented things well in both the report and the site visit in November. There were some recommendations that came through there, I guess in particular to essentially sustainability and deliverables of the program. And looking towards new funding as a key item there. And then some management, EDI, and communication issues that we're fixing in phase 2. Next slide. Oh, and at the bottom, COVID-19 is something, of course, everyone's dealing with that and having to deal with that in the PERC program. And we're looking towards, at the very least, a 1-year extension, hopefully with some funds, additional funds to accommodate our extra field season that we have to do. Next slide is just an outline of the flagships. So these are research flagships. So it's all about establishing digital breeding for climate change resiliency in our target crops, primarily wheat, canola, and lentils. So we have these 4 flagships, which are all integrated and working towards this goal, making use of what we developed in phase 1 to deliver the objectives on the right hand side there. So climate resilient germplasm, new software tools, and new platforms to applying them to generate data, which are then utilized by the tools. Next slide. Oh, there we go. There's a fancy graphic. And the next slide, just a listing of the flagships and who's responsible for them. Quite a few of these people are present at this workshop. and have provided some context with respect to the research that's ongoing here. So essentially with flagship 1, where it's kind of like a controlled environment approach, looking for physiological variation in the key crops of interest, with that overall goal of essentially what we want to go towards is yield sustainability. That was mentioned yesterday, as that was a key overarching goal for the crops of interest. And flagship 2, that's essentially root soil microbe interactions, and including all aspects there, including things like root structure architecture. Leon is engaged in that program, as well as Bobby, who presented yesterday. And then flagship 3 is something that ties everything together in terms of the data, the deep learning. And Ian, Mark and Kirsten are leading that effort. Flagship 4 is essentially the outdoor phenomics work. So applying the tools, the platforms in the field. And then, of course, we can link that to the work that we're generating in flagship 1. Next slide. Just a quick outline of one resource that we've generated and we will be using in flagship 1 is the plant dietech platform. So this is essentially a controlled environment platform for monitoring physiological differences between germplasm in the key crops. Gives a finely resolved monitoring of water utilization. You can also use it for other things, so nutrient utilization as well, because you can actually control the level of nutrients in the water that you're feeding the plants. But you get a very resolved time course of water utilization in the crops. This is something that is a joint effort between funding from the PERC, and then we're working with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada in developing this platform, which will be available next year. And we intend to actually analyse, first off, a range of the structured populations we have available in the crops of interest. Next slide. As well as the flagships, we have these supporting platforms. You'll hear more about the data management side of things from, I think, Chanchal is talking at the end of this session, and also Kevin later on. The social science, you heard from Peter Phillips yesterday about that aspect in the PERC. And then also we have the software tools and maintaining them through the length of the program. The next slide. I guess the key thing here is international collaboration. We have partnering with Gießen. They have a large scale physiological monitoring platform. Actually, it's sort of halfway between controlled environment and the field environment, and what we want to do is partner with them and get data on the same populations. We also have a very similar effort going on in the Netherlands, the NPEC initiative, and we're planning on collaborating with them in the remaining time of phase 2. Next slide. Beyond phase 2, a key thing is sustainability of the research program. So we want to be looking at round 3, which has not been formalized, but we're hoping will be announced sometime in the next year. And perhaps that's an opportunity for a food stroke water CFREF application. Of course, there's going to be other funding opportunities as well. Opportunities and needs. A need, I think, is it's been a focus for the last few years, is developing things in terms of plant growth facilities, state-of-the-art facilities across the campus. There's a shortfall at the moment, and it'll be great to get that accommodated moving forward. And then one thing that crossed my mind, and I've not seen all the presentations yesterday, but there's this new irrigation plan that was announced in June of this year. About $4 billion will be spent in enhancing the amount of irrigated land in the province at 3 phases over 10 years. I am not at all sure what is planned in terms of research associated with this effort, if any, but I sort of wondered if there might be some opportunities here for aligning with some of our research activities that we have ongoing on campus. And that is it. Thank you. Thanks for very good slide transition there, Leon, or Pankaj. Okay. Next presentation, Yanping Li. Oh, you're on.
Oh, yeah. Can you
Hello.
see my screen? Yes. Hello.
Please go ahead. Yeah, you're a bit faint.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Yanping Li. associate professor from SENS and GWS. So this is this is my team at UFS, and the photo is taken during our weekly online group meeting. So we are a group of climate scientists and modelers. We work on climate change and extreme events. One specific area that is in line with the theme of this workshop is our coupled atmosphere, land surface, and hydrological modeling, and which can be used to conduct crop modeling. And this is helpful for the agricultural climate adaptation study. So the main tool we are using is numerical model and supercomputer, which can help to translate the global climate change information provided by the IPCC report to the local scale that we are interested in, like the Western Canada and the Canadian prairies. This process, we call it dynamic downscaling. The global climate model cannot provide the information that is needed for the development of regional adaptation and mitigation strategy because it's very close resolution. Well, the regional climate model with a much higher resolution and a smaller domain is able to capture the key climate processes and the local information with a reasonable amount of computational cost. So I moved to Canada and joined UFS in 2013 as a faculty. Since then, we have finished several projects, such as the extreme events study, like June 2013 Alberta flooding, and the drought, the growing season drought happened in 2015. We also have looked at the climate change impacts on the summertime precipitation over the prairies, to know for the prairies where the precipitation would actually come from. We have conducted a backtrack data analysis to identify the relative contribution of the remote regions like oceans, and the contribution from the local water recycling like evaporation and evapotranspiration. Also, one of the projects that I would like to highlight is the climate adaptation study using coupled atmosphere and land surface and hydrological modeling in 4-kilometer resolution. So over the prairies, the two ecosystems, the prairie pothole wetlands and cropland, they are very well mixed. So they together provide important ecosystem service to the surrounding environment, and together interact with the regional climate. Our modeling approach is to separate to two paths. The model development to understand the impact of climate change on wetland and on the cropland, and then they join together to our final research objective, that is to study the wetland and cropland feedbacks to regional climate using our coupled land atmosphere modeling system. So climate variation has a significant impact on crop production. What I showed here is the annual mean corn yield in the US since 1960. While technological improvement have resulted in a general increase in crop production, extreme weather events, you can see here, have caused a dramatic reduction in some particular years. So without any further technological breakthroughs, these corn production are unlikely to continue their historical upward trend, because temperature will rise above the optimal level. the other thing is about water productivity. The water productivity in cropland is demonstrated as production against water use. Water use include the rain and irrigation. So in our recent modeling study, we used the corn as an example. In general, the crop production increases with more available water supply, but it reaches a plateau at some level. This means that there's optimal water use condition on crop production, and the water exceeding that limit becomes much less efficient. So what I would like to do in food water is to work together with the hydrologists and the crop experts in UFS to help to improve the parameterization of the dynamic crop process in the model. Different type of crop respond differently to climate change. Some plants, like a C4 plant, has a higher water use efficiency than other plants and are more resistant to the drought condition. So my big question to the group is, how can we adapt agricultural production system to climate change? Numerical model can simulate the crop growth and the crop production under different future climate conditions. It can be a powerful tool or platform to answer scientific questions. For example, we can set our objective as maximizing crop production, or maybe more sustainable and optimal water use efficiency, and find the best crop type or irrigation strategy that matches the local environmental condition, which can be soil moisture, temperature, or soil irrigation. And this modeling system can also provide the direction for the optimizing farming practices. Oh, that's all. Thank you. Hello?
Hi, we're here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks, Andy. Are you able to stay on another 15 minutes or so? We've been trying to tag on 15 minutes of discussion. So just asking if Andy, if you're still there and if you can moderate that.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I can do that. We have a couple more talks. I think Ian.
Oh, we have more talks? Wow,
yeah.
great. Oh, never mind.
Ian, well, if people are actually on the call, Ian, are you there?
Yes, yeah.
Hi, Ian. Please go ahead.
Great. Okay, thanks everyone. So I'm Ian Stavness. So I'll start with my path. So I did engineering school here at the University of Saskatchewan, grad school at UBC, postdoc at Stanford, and then came back to USask as a faculty in computer science in 2012. And over the past few years, I've been engaged in the PERC program, and more recently as co-lead of the third flagship, Deep Learning for Phenomics. We like to joke that what we do is generally make the most boring GoPro videos that have ever been recorded, because we send GoPros out to the field and take these pictures from a tractor pointing down at breeding plots. And we also have cameras that have been planted in the field and take time-lapse pictures over the growing season. But the main focus of our work is analyzing these images to generate information about the plants and information about plant traits for breeding. So our work is very collaborative. I'll highlight a few of my collaborators, direct collaborators in computer science. So Mark Aramian and Kevin Stanley are both heavily involved in data analysis for PERC. Both were not able to speak here due to scheduling, so I'll highlight them as important members. And then I work closely with Carl Goodwin as well on developing tools that take these analyses and put them in the hands of people in a useful way. And then, critical to our work is the collaboration with the folks in plant and soil sciences. So I would say we work most closely with Steve Shirtliff's group on aerial imaging and analysis. But then we've had very close collaborations with the plant breeding groups. So Kirsten Curtis and then Sally and Christina at AFFC. And I think this level of really detailed collaboration has really driven forward the questions that we're trying to answer on the analysis side of things. And then we also work with Isabel at AFFC on more genomics analyses, as well as Andy. And Kevin Stanley has worked closely with Bobby and Steve on the soil science things for developing new types of data analyses. In terms of methods, generally we develop methods. So the main methods we develop are modeling techniques, both mechanistic and Bayesian models. But in the image analysis, a lot of our work deals with machine learning and deep learning. The difference here being that traditional machine learning uses hand-selected features. So if you know ahead of time some useful things you want to get out of an image, you can do those and then layer a machine learning technique on top of that, like a SVM or a random forest. So the canola flower example earlier is a good example. We know canola flowers are yellow, so clearly yellow is a good feature that we should pick up on. And those provide generally pretty good results and also some good understanding of what features are most important. So those are why those techniques are important. But increasingly, we're moving towards deep learning approaches to try to tackle more challenging phenotyping problems. And here, the main difference is that now, instead of saying ahead of time what features we want to pick out, we're trying to learn those features directly from labeled data or data that has examples along with it. In terms of the tools we use, mostly computers. In particular, Copernicus data center is a new data center on campus that I think everyone in this group should be aware of, that we have a really world-class data center that's been co-funded by the Water Institute and GIFs. We also use cameras because we take a lot of pictures, and then most of our software is developed in Python. And I wanted to highlight a few of the projects that are kind of ongoing. So a lot of our work in PERC has to do with aerial image analysis, and this is where we work very closely with Steve Shirtliff's group, who takes pictures with drones. But we've quickly found out we have a massive amount of drone data that's been collected, and we're trying to develop tools to organize those data in useful ways. So this is a plot vision tool, a website you can go to and see all of the different flights of drones that have been captured, and then zoom in. And for the plant breeders, they're mostly interested in these small rectangular regions in the field where they have different varieties of the crop of interest. So we're really trying to narrow down to those regions and then do analysis on those and provide information back to the plant breeders. In the deep learning area, certainly we do a lot of kind of direct measuring phenotypes from images, but we've also been working on new techniques for trying to capture stress response. So the challenge here, this is an example of canola that's water stressed and well watered. And the challenge is that these stress responses, you're going to have a very multifaceted effect in plants. So just measuring individual phenotypes and trying to put those together often doesn't capture the changes. So with a deep learning approach, what we can do is try to learn features that best discriminate this response to stress. And then from individuals in a large plant population, we can measure those sort of abstract phenotypes and then come up with a way to better discriminate them directly. So this has better discriminating power, but less explainability. So it's a bit of a trade-off there. But if you're trying to get actionable information to make a decision, we think these types of approaches are quite useful. We're also working on domain adaptation approaches. So often we'll have examples from one field or one indoor experiment. This is an example of wheat taken indoors where someone's gone through and clicked on all of the wheat spikelets. But we want to use the model in some other environment. We want to take it out to the field and use it. And these are quite different. There's a kind of a messy background or slight changes. And one of the challenges with deep learning is that often transferring to those other conditions just doesn't work, fails completely. So domain adaptation, we're trying to use a sort of information between different domains, different fields, if you will, to try to learn invariant features that then we can kind of make predictions in the test environment based on all of the data we've collected in the different environments. So I think this is important for that idea of a single site experiment. If we're collecting a lot of data on one site, we just have to be aware that it's very hard to move these trained models elsewhere without these sort of approaches. And we're working very closely with international partners to generate very large, diverse data sets. So this is a wheat data set that we've assembled with partners around the world, and we ran a machine learning competition and had huge success. Over 2,200 people from around the world trying to get the best results on this particular competition. And I think there's a huge appetite for these sort of, environment and sustainability competitions where we can really engage people from around the world. So, this is one area I think we can push towards. What I would like, I think computer science can play an important role both as a technology platform. Clearly, everyone uses analysis and software, but I think it's important as well to recognize computer science as a research pillar. If we have state-of-the-art research in computer science in the Nexus, it's going to improve that technology platform and going to really try to allow us to improve and have a higher impact on all of the scientific problems in food and water. I have a number of research problems I'm particularly interested in. I think they overlap with a lot of the talks that people have had. And I think training programs are also important. Kevin Stanley and Kirsten Bett had this nice example of a cross-listed computer science, plant science grad course. And I think this is a model we can take towards the larger nexus of food, environment science, water science, having these cross-listed training programs. And then my big questions, the first one, if you had a new type of data analysis, if you could come up with one, how would that change your experiment? I think this is kind of an interesting conversation we can have. Certainly we can work on retrospective data, but if we're doing prospective data, I think having an understanding of what are the techniques for analysis can help us target or change the experiment in very interesting ways. And then I would advocate for us to try to really be a world leader in food, water data. Again, I think this is where we can have a huge impact because everyone's collecting data. If we can do a good job of organizing it, making it available to the world, and having other people contribute to those data sets, I think that's a tremendously powerful activity. That's it for me. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Ian. It's a nice presentation. I think we have one more presentation, Chanchal. If you're on the call, I think you are. Oh, hi, you're on. Yeah, we can see the presentation. We can't hear you at the moment.
Okay.
That's good.
So hello everyone, good morning. So I'm Chanchal Roy from computer science. So who I am, I graduated from Queen's in 2009 and came here at USask in computer science. And then I am mostly a software engineer. So we work on software maintenance or data management or empirical software engineering, building recommender systems. Over the last several years, I also work with PARC and GWF. I will talk about a little bit about them, what we have been working on. And right now we are also leading, I'm also leading an NSAC Create industry stream Create program on software analytics. And as part of this, we're also doing working with GIPS and GIWFs on like maybe domain specific data analytics as a part of the program. So in terms of the tools or methods, actually we try to build tools or we try to develop methods. We use machine learning or use software engineering principles or IR-based means information retrieval based approaches or some other big data analysis techniques borrowing from the biology. And we try to support reliable, sustainable, and cost-effective software development or software maintenance. And also we build tools for large scale data analytics and also for data management, building different kinds of recommender systems in software engineering. And in terms of food and water, what we have done, we have been working with PARC to build cloud frameworks like maybe scientific workflow management systems to support larger scale data analytics. So like you can do your larger scale data analytics in the cloud, maybe you do not need to install anything. You can use a lot of drag and drop features, or you can have domain specific languages. In terms of with GWF, we have been working on migrating CREAM. CREAM is one of the water modeling systems, cold region hydrological modeling systems, to migrate to kind of a next generation CREAM with a modern platform, modern languages, with modern design for that one. And in terms of right now with PARC, we're also working with a data management repository and portal. I will talk about it a little bit. and Andy and Kevin is there as well, Banani. And we have been also getting involved with the GIFS Bangladesh project on, and we are kind of part of the data management and analytics team. So here are the people I was talking about for our park data management project right now. So there are a lot of people have been working on it. And we also have a prototype actually already kind of, and we are asking different researchers to provide their input to use their data for these management systems or share the data. So that process is going on. And again, this is not done. So this is, we are still in the development phase. So what is our target? What we have been doing right now? Well, of course, we have been still working on migrating CREAM, but more on that, we are working on this data management project where our target is that to provide sustainable preservation, retention, and sharing of park data. And of course, the objective is that we will have a federated repository and public facing portal, and where we will have the FAIR principle. FAIR principle has a lot of different properties, but it has kind of, the data has to be findable. People should find the data easily. Data has to be accessible anytime, anywhere in a standard format. Data should be interoperable, like you can use this data for different tools, and there should be a common language, a standard language. And of course, also data should be also reusable. So there are kind of different properties, different kind of definitions on this, and we're trying to follow those principles. And this is the ultimate kind of target, to have a data lake. So with this data lake, if we have a data lake for park or maybe park water nexus, the target is that in the data lake, you have all the data, you have all those curation, exploration, visualization, and modeling features enriched, embedded in it. And people should be able to, and different varieties of people from different stakeholders, they should be able to use the data, share the data, perform their analytics in the lake. And of course, what I would like to see in this park, food water nexus, I would like to see a data management and analytic platform. Maybe that is analytics should be also performed in the cloud, and more so that we want to develop something that the multiple stakeholders can use that data lake or data platform or analytics platform, and they should be able to use it, focusing on their user-centered design, so that people from different varieties, different genders, different competing knowledge can get access to the data, do the real analysis, perform their what they want to do, right? So it should be easy of use, right? And it should, of course, add value. So go for use case specific manner, so that we know whether it is adding value or not, right? Of course, it should be designed in a way, which is one of the main principles in my research, to make it sustainable, not just for 6 years, 7 years, or not just now. It should be sustainable over years and years, like Zay was talking about that food water is going to be a long-term investment, right? And of course, we should also have some APIs, user interfaces, so that people can actually, based on those things, they can develop their, even better things in the future or whatever. So this is the data management, but more so, we would like to also see cloud-based data analytics. So the platform, we should support different kinds of analytical platforms or analytical tools, scientific management systems, integrated with the data management, so that you not only can share, store all this data, but also you can perform your analytics. And what big question I have, yes, I would like to see a data management and analytics platform where food water scientists could see could store their data, could share their data, visualize data, and at the same time could perform their analysis without worrying about computing knowledge, without worrying about computing requirements, without worrying about any setup hassles. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chanchal, for that presentation. I guess we're at the end of the presentations now. We're a bit over time. So I'm wondering how we should do things. Do we want to have a few questions now, or do we want to forego some questions until this afternoon's general discussion? Maybe Jay.
Yeah, I think it's, sorry, I'm getting a phone call from RBC simultaneously. ringing in my ear. I declined. No, I think we better take a break. It's been a long stretch, and we've got a few more sessions. I do want to say it was a really great discussion, and I like the focus. There's a lot of modeling and digital discussion, and lots of insight into the details of what's happening at GIFS, which I thought was really important for the group. You know, I haven't seen some of that stuff, or haven't seen it all sort of put together like this, which was really awesome. I mean, in terms of, we'll have lots of follow-up meetings, but I'm making notes here like, yeah, I've got to contact this, theme 1 or theme 3 or whatever over, as part of the PERC program and talk to you guys. Thought the data stuff was really great. Yanping, I thought your modeling stuff was excellent. Christy, been following your comments, really great. So I don't know, Leon or Andy, unless you guys want to make some overall remarks.
No, I mean, just to echo your comments, Jay, I think it was, we ended up with some nice representation of the different things there. Some of the talks linked through the PERC program, so hopefully that was useful to people who are not familiar with the PERC program, just to get an idea about the scope of the work and hopefully how it can fit with some of the objectives, common objectives with work at in the water research fields.
Yeah, and like you, Jay, I've learned a lot more about Global Institute for Water Security. A number of good talks. I see your work. I see a lot of potential for agriculture, and you guys are already starting to tailor some of it. And so I've learned quite a bit more about views from some of the talks.
Yeah.
Today.
So thanks. I hope maybe this afternoon, the time that we have for these meetings, it goes by fast. But to me, I see, like every other person has the same overarching question, which is, how are we going to basically do sustainable food and food production and water management, or call it, agricultural and water management, whether we're talking about the prairies, whether we're talking about the globe. And how do we do that in ways that are most efficient, with water use, most efficient with nutrient uptake, sustainable for the environment. It's a question that so to me, this is, it's an overarching theme that's emerged, and all the things that we're talking about could fit under this this umbrella. The modeling, the data science, the network of sites, the observations. The focus on some key areas have, at least in my mind, some key areas have emerged, like, the root zone stuff is really emerging. Right now, today, we heard a lot about the digital stuff and the data, the data stuff, and that's emerging. We haven't heard yet about the modeling stuff, but it's great to hear people talk about the need for better ag production coupled to water. And then Yanping, I think, provided that bridge, and we'll probably hear a little bit more from Martin and John. So I see them as all sort of like, nice, really program elements. And then Chanchal, you were just talking about the data platform, which is really exciting, the education programs, and someone else was talking about certificates. I mean, I could go on and on, but, this is what's kind of falling out of my head.